when I, many years ago, was training in psychosynthesis, at the beginning of every lesson, the teacher would come in and they had a big whiteboard and they'd write up on the wall, on that whiteboard, this is not the truth, exclamation mark. This is a story. We are really happy and wanting to share some of what we've learned in 38 years so far of being together and falling off many edges, which I'm sure we all know. I want to acknowledge that my experience is that everyone I meet has the experience of a broken heart, that we all know loss and we all bring so many things into our relationships, and we want to share some of how we have worked with the basic material, in this case between a man and a woman. And of course we celebrate and acknowledge that there are many different forms of relationship, many different ways. So we're going to share some of what we have found useful and some of the, we find that the longer we go on, the more embarrassed we are about how unbelievably stubborn we are in our patterns and beliefs. But we also have gained a bit of a sense of humor about it along the way. And so, this is not the truth, and we're not sitting here on some high horse of relationship perfection. We are learning. We are learning more and more. In fact, in the last 5 years, I would say the speed of our learning has really kind of gone into overdrive. And we're both 60 years old now, which is kind of strange, isn't it? Just the time just keeps rolling. The years keep going by. So also to acknowledge what you were saying, Ruth, that we are aware of the many conflicts and different forms of suffering and beauty that are present right now. In me, between us, maybe in you two, definitely in our world. And so we like to dedicate all the work we do to something greater than ourselves, something that makes an effort. And thank you very much for just hearing this invitation.
So I want to acknowledge that we absolutely have no special privileged place of knowing a perfect relationship, definitely not, or knowing stuff. At the same time, we have been together for 38 years and we are basically a mutually empowering, committed, faithful, joyous, loving relationship in which sex has got better and better and our intimacy has got better and better, with hills and valleys, up and downs, but basically, so I feel in the relationship to being 60, there is a ground to share something of value. And it's not the same as we've heard in many places. So, Ya'Acov, how are you and what's important to you about being here?
So what I'm with is that the one of the challenges of being in relationship is loss, is risk. There's risk to loving, and because we all have a sense of loss, and because loss is inevitable, it's like death is part of our lives, it's very present. And so the deeper we go, or I go with you, and the more I reveal, there is this feeling of one day, who knows when, tomorrow, hopefully not, hopefully, long time, please, long time, long harvest, please. Even though we don't know, there is that certainty that at some point we have to say goodbye. I remember seeing Stephen Jenkinson talk. He's an amazing guy who spent a lot of time working in hospice care, and him talking about that reality of mortality and getting real with that. And I find it really helps me in my life, because I feel like there's not so much time to waste anymore. Like one of the things we met our neighbour who's an elder when we walk in the mornings. A lovely man called Simon, who we just met walking our dog, and he's walking his dog. And he said, "Oh, 60. Great. Don't waste your time on anyone who has nothing to give you and to whom you have nothing to give." I was like, wow, I need to think about that. That's good advice. Really, don't waste your time on anyone who has nothing to give you and whom you have nothing to give. And that really, it sharpened some kind of focus for me. And I know when we got together, we were kind of kids. I was 22 years old. I was deeply emotionally immature, to say the least. I was a young Jewish guy who thought he was an anarchist and who was in the anti-everything brigade. Anti-apartheid, anti-animal cruelty, anti-nuclear, anti-military industrial complex. And I was a protester. And one time when I was doing these non-violent direct actions, I was on a roof next to Faslane Loch in Scotland, where they have the nuclear submarines. And this building was a building where they were testing for nuclear reactivity in the Loch. So myself and my friends went up there with banners, and of course the police came and we got arrested, and we were put in Maryhill police stations in a cell for 4 days because it was a bank holiday. So I was sat in a cell for 4 days with nothing, just a white wall. And I kind of got the feeling of what Zen meditation is all about. You just look at the white wall, and the white wall just looks back at you. And so many thoughts came up. I remembered that I was chopping down the fence around the military base, which you could get away with in those days. And I remember that as I was chopping through those links, I could feel that fence inside myself. I could feel the links of that chain. And it was about, I didn't know why or what that was about, but in the cell, it really put me on the road to, this is also about me. It's not just about what I want to change or criticize out there. It's about how I'm part of what I want to change. And so that was the ground that I brought into relationship. And we got together at a particular time in the feminist movement, where I belonged to a men's group called the Wee Willie Wimpos and the Wailing Wizards of Gondwanaland.
True.
We were really proud that we were the Wee Willie Wimpos. And we were doing our best to be good men according to what the women around us were telling us they needed. And so we came into relationship in that particular time, and we were very young. And so during the journey, we've grown each other up in a way. And we have, we were very young. And so we didn't want to follow anyone else's idea of what a marriage or relationship should be. So we experimented with all kinds of things that young people experiment with ideas of openness and closeness and threesomes and everything that we could play with and experience. Not in such a hedonistic way, but really out of deep curiosity and wanting to challenge. For me, one thing that came up very early for me was my unbelievably deep insecurity, the expectation that whatever you were saying to me, at some point there would be a betrayal. That's what I brought with me. At some point, this woman is going to betray me. And of course, with that story, I'm kind of acting in a way that has an influence that's enrolling this other being into my own piece of theatre, which is my own life experience. And of course, then it happened. It's not that you betrayed me.
It was,
but we were in that. It was, yeah. But we were in that story together. And slowly over the years, I've come to understand that that's the nature of relationship. That if I fall in love with somebody, then I am making myself totally vulnerable to that person. And it's not like I trust you and that's it. Like trust is a static place. Trust is a process. And I would say that it took me around 25 years to earn Susannah's trust. And I would say that that was time very well spent. And I'll say more about that afterwards. So that's what I'm with.
So you're very much in the Genesis story of our relationship.
So Susannah, what are you bringing? What's in your heart that brings you here this evening?
Thank you. So I want to talk about, which is connected to what you were talking about the two aspects of falling in love or beginning for us as we've experienced it. But I think that this is very common, these two threads. And one of them is the soul connection of something that, like two bits of a jigsaw that just go boom. And within that dynamic, both of those pieces are stronger. That's on the light side. And then this what we call the shadow marriage, which is the other bit of how our neuroses or our wounds or our survival strategies from our wounds tend also to have a lock in with the other. And that's not actually a bad thing. That's a call for healing. I'll talk more about that in a moment. But with the two of us, those threads are really clear. And you've spoken a bit about the shadow marriage, at least from your point of view of the expectation of betrayal. And I brought the expectation of being wiped out as a woman. The man eventually is going to wipe you out. I even had a dream near the beginning of our relationship where Ya'Acov, my name was written in pencil and he rubbed it out. It was like that fear of erasure. And I can see that going back through the lineage of my ancestors, but also it being very strongly in the feminist story that was around at that time. It's still around in different ways, but of the male oppression as something that would inevitably, eventually disable rather than empower me. So that was that bit. At the same time, we met when you were 22, I was 23. I was not going to live with a man. I was not going to have children. I was definitely not going to get married. Are you kidding? I was going to live with women, have relationships with men, sexual relationships with men, but that wasn't going to be the centre of my life. I was absolutely clear about that. My parents had a relatively good marriage, but I did not see a lot of joy, the kind of joy and freedom I wanted. But I got to a point of having had so many lovers that I was just like, actually, I'm ready for the one. I want to have, rather than dividing up, I'll share this bit of me with this guy, this bit of me with this guy, this bit of me with this woman. I want to be with one person, one, in my case, man, with whom I can be all of me and invite him to be all of him. And this is a very privileged thing that I experienced, but I asked God for him, and he came. And when we met, it wasn't love at first sight, but it was recognition. And when we hugged, our first hug, I knew that's it. That's him. That's the one. And it's quite wild to me that here we are, 30, whatever it is. Yeah, 30 years, isn't it? 38 years later. And we've been together ever since. We had a little bit of a courtship, but then that was 1986. So that's the soul level of recognition, and I know not everyone has that experience, and I don't know why I did, but I did. So that's just the ground of how it has been between us. Yeah. And then the shadow marriage, that part where I'm always expecting to be wiped out or oppressed or controlled, that bit, and you're expecting to be betrayed, that bit. One of our friends said, it's like, she said, what's written on the other's forehead? That you just know. So I see, I will wipe you out. And he sees, betrayal. And that, you can look at that as the inevitability of scars, finding a co-scar to dance with and have that wounded dance confirmed. But you can also look at it, and I think it's more true, if there's a will for healing, to say in that click of the scars, there's a let's heal this. Let's experience that this pain is a pain that we can choose to let go of. And the way to that is really not easy, because it involves acknowledging my own horrificness, my own violence. And I don't mean physically, but it could be, but not physically generally, but my own aggression, my own unconsciousness, my own shadow. And to do that, I need to know also my own light. And the more we know our own light and our own beauty and our strength and our particular magic, our medicine, the more, I'll speak for myself, I've been able to also hold accept, acknowledge, take responsibility for the nastiness I bring to the space between us. And that's when the healing comes, when I can acknowledge that. I was mean to Ya'Acov earlier today, and you didn't need to wipe me out about it, and we didn't need to have a big drama about it. Once I could see, oh yeah, I'm so sorry, I was unnecessarily sharp with you about that. Sorry. But it's not just the apology; it's the acknowledgement of the actual thing. And then, in the light of that acknowledgement of that truth, then the pain dissolves. I think that's what I sense in myself, see in you, and see a lot in the world, both on the macro level and the micro level, is we're all longing to be seen as we are, and to have our beauty acknowledged and our pain acknowledged by ourselves, but also by each other. And that medicine of not even trying to fix each other, but just acknowledging, I see you. There's a tree which we love near where we live, on the River and it's a huge, beautiful beech tree. And for some reason, I see the beech as very feminine. I don't know if that's true in terms of how the English law about trees, and the oak is masculine. But anyway, this is a queen. She's a green. Oh my goddess! Right now, she's so resplendent, like all the beeches are. And we've loved that beech tree for years. And last summer, we went round, for some reason, into the river, and we saw that one side of her is totally scarred. There's a whole limb or limbs that have fallen down, and there's this big concave wound in this tree. And we had never seen that. We'd just seen the other side. That's an amazing metaphor. That's how it is. We're all wounded and whole. We have our scars, which are part of our particularity. Ultimately, become part of our medicine, our magic, our gift. So that came with us, that image. And then on the way back from that walk, we were driving through Ivy Bridge, and we saw somebody walking this beautiful dog, like a wolf or a husky. It was really beautiful, proud dog. Then we saw that they only had their front legs. Behind the dog, hips of the dog went onto a kind of cart with wheels, and the person was walking with the dog, and the dog was so proudly trotting along, so beautifully whole and well and full of life. Same. Wounded and whole. Yeah. So here we are, wounded and whole. And I love acknowledging how the space between us. How long have I got?
Oh, I need my glasses.
Okay. I don't want to start this next bit unless I just finished. Ding. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't hear you. Thank you. Yeah. That was
You think?
Yeah, you probably got better hearing.
He said he didn't.
You
Did
know,
you?
did.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
No, he's just checking.
Yeah. You're just checking that I'm being fair.
You're not wiping me out.
My plan revealed. Make sure you keep the timer on your wrist. Yeah. So thank you. Hearing you acknowledge both of these aspects of relationship, the soul, so to speak, as you said, that place where we fit together like pieces of a jigsaw, but in harmony, like knowing each other and serving each other, like here to serve each other. And then the other part of the relationship path where we're growing up. And growing up means, for me, taking responsibility for what I'm carrying, what I bring, not just my own biography, but what I learned growing up, what my expectations were, the expectations that I was trained into, to be willing to challenge my unexamined assumptions about myself, about you, about life. And yeah, I know in some ways I've also been very lucky with that, because life's been not short of those kind of challenges, those sorts of mirrors. And yeah, so this is what we mean by relationship as spiritual practice. That, you know, it's all very well to meditate by ourselves, wonderful, to sit quietly alone, to be on vision quest, to have amazing visions of who we are and what our place is, or just to be in that sense of me and my spiritual journey. And that's great. And there is this kind of story that in order to be with somebody else, you first have to be with yourself. We think that's complete nonsense. We really do, because it's just not the way things are. We learn as much about relationship with ourselves with somebody else as we do on our own, and maybe even more so. And the challenge to bring our best hopes about who we can be into that space of intimacy. And you know, when you bring then sexuality into the equation, and the powerful alchemy of sexuality, and the sacredness of sexuality, though not many of us, I imagine, grew up with that story that our sexuality is a sacred, divine gift and a gateway to really knowing our connection to something greater, and that making love is actually, it's a creation. We are making something that wasn't there before, called love. We're creating something. Of course, that can be a child, it can be a creative project, it can be love. And so a lot of our journey has been about, and my journey has been about, coming back into, well, not even back, coming for the first time really into my body, to be able to feel sensitive, how sensitive I am. I think we all have this, that as human beings, we're unbearably sensitive. Like when we open to the spring, it's so, if we allow that feeling of spring that's in the earth and in the trees, that's still unbroken, despite everything, that is still whole. We talk a lot about the unbroken in nature and in life and in ourselves, and how important it is to be in relationship with that as often as possible. Through that, strengthening that which is unbroken inside us, and through that, being able to hold what is broken inside us and between us and in the world. And it's so important when we are aware of a lot of suffering, that we, as well as engaging to the level that we engage, to be with that unbroken nourishment. And for me, one of the best ways of that happening is through intimacy. And, you know, my sexual education, like many men that I know, was through my father's pornographic collection, and which is not a very good education. It's really not. It puts all kinds of ridiculous expectations in my life, and that far outweighed what they called sex education in school. Our dear beloved embarrassed science teacher, who was just as red as a tomato. And yeah, so there's a lot of undoing to be done. There's a lot of unwinding, and you said you were not very patient at the beginning, and neither am I particularly. I'm not. I've learned to be more patient. I'm learning about patience. But I was in a hurry to get to a place that through time I've learned that the only way to arrive in a place of this dream that I always had of what that intimacy or making love could be was to learn to listen. And Susannah, you are a real strength in the importance of checking out that we've understood each other. Because although we speak the same mother language, mother tongue, very often we think we've understood each other and we haven't at all. What we're hearing is our own story in the words that are being said. And that is the cause of so much, perhaps all conflict, that we're not actually listening. We're more already, when somebody's speaking, we're already, writing our defense and preparing it, or not preparing it, just jumping right in. And, we know how quickly on a nervous system level we can activate and become activated and, aggressive, passive aggressive, or aggressive defensive. And we always had the story, of course, that we were the victim of each other's bad behavior. Like, it's your fault. You're doing this to me. Yeah. You know, yes? This is what we learned. It's very much what we are, some part of our education teaches us. Like, not to be responsible for what is my 50% of this that we are in right now. What's my contribution to it? And over the years, we've learned things like, often when a conflict arises, it's got nothing to do with what's happening in that moment. It's something that happened 3 days ago. That's just been bubbling under the surface, just like this little gnarly, pointed discomfort that, just we rub up against each other until, and then there's an eruption of conflict. And so becoming more sensitive is a necessity to be able to go, oh, the most important word I've learned in relationship in 38 years is this. Ouch. Ow. That hurts. Ow. Just that acknowledgement. Not you're hurting me, but I'm hurting. I'm in pain. And, for me, growing up as a man in a particular way, that's not easy. I don't know any men who like to be vulnerable. Like, really enjoy that. With oneself, okay, but with another, that was beep beep. Over to you.
And when Ya'Acov manages to say, ouch, not, you're hurting me, but I'm hurting, it's such a relief. And that's been the big one for us with you. And for me, I would say the biggest thing for me is to be able to say just really clearly, I'm angry about that, or I don't like that, or please would you not, or just simply name what's going on for me and what I need with a boundary. I find it astonishing that I found it so difficult to really, practice that. And rather than let a big charge build up and only when it's got that big, come out with it. I am so good at anger on the dance floor or in the dojo. I'm like queen of but actually just owning in a normal, non-dramatic way that bit. And then I think for you it's also just such a relief when it's clear. And this is very, very typical, of course, feminine, masculine, female, male thing. The man finding it more difficult to acknowledge vulnerability, and the woman find it more difficulty with acknowledging anger or boundary. And how helpful it is for the other when that can just be there. But I want to come back. Thank you for what you shared. I think that's very helpful as a kind of takeout. If anyone's looking for a takeout for men and women, to be able to simply say, ouch, that hurts, rather than all the other bits. And then what you said about listening. Gosh. So their shadow marriage thing that we both mentioned, betrayer. I will wipe you out. So the way that turns around is, if I think he's going to wipe me out, I'm defensive, aggressive, trying to maintain my autonomy so I can't be wiped out, which leads me to do things which are either or are perceived as betraying. You see how it loops around and confirms his thing, and then the way you deal with that.
Yeah, the way I expect. Really, it's like, it comes down to the most easy way is I just have this ongoing ridiculous story that you're not looking after me. And, you know, when I'm in that place, I'm just looking for proof of that. And of course, it's always easy to find proof of the story we're telling. It's called inattentional blindness. We just see what confirms our story. And then it looks like that's the truth. And, you know, for that part of us, it is true. And so then I'm kind of already upset and withdrawn and with turning away, like it's really turning away, which is,
and critical.
And in that, as I'm turning away, critical.
Which I then experience as you see, he's trying to wipe me out. Nothing I can do is ever good enough. Bam! And then they go round and round, and that eternal dance goes on until somebody says, stop. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So for a woman in that place of that kind of fear of being wiped out or disrespected in some way, and at the same time longing for a strong man to be at my side, that is a real conundrum. I don't want to be wiped out, but I don't want to be with
a wee willy whimper.
Thank you. Help me out. A wee willy whimper. I want a man. I need to be with a man. I'm a strong woman. I need a strong man. But I'm scared of being wiped out. What the fuck do you do with that? Excuse me. I'm glad we're all grown-ups. I will swear, probably. Again, I know I have. But and then I started hanging out with horses. The reason this is important is that because I have Exmoor ponies. I'm very, very privileged to have four formerly wild Exmoor ponies who they let me be in their herd, and we're learning together about trust and sensitivity and strength. And they're amazing teachers because they don't lie. They have no investment in anything except being safe and having a good connection. And they tell the truth instantly when I'm not congruent or not peaceful inside myself. And I began learning about how horses behave in the wild, so that my own pony whispering studies could be informed by that, by how horses naturally behave as herds in the wild. And I learned this. that in the wild, there's a herd, normally one stallion and many, many mares, female horses, and the children, the foals, young ones. Very occasionally there's two stallions, but normally there's one. If the herd perceives danger, the stallion will pick that up very fast, if not he's the one to spot it, because that's his role, protection. And then he will race towards the danger immediately. Whatever the danger is, he'll race towards it so that he is between his mares and his children and the danger. And he'll stand there looking at the danger, sussing out what it is and how serious and what should we do. And then normally two young males will come and flank him. They're called his lieutenants in human language. And they're learning how to be stallions with him. So there's him and then two younger males, and then the elder female, the lead mare, will normally be checking out in communication with the stallion what is it, and if necessary she will lead the herd to safety, and then the stallion and his lieutenants will bring up the rear, protecting with their heels the women and the children. And when I heard that, I went all goosey, like, that's it. That's it. That's male strength. It's protection. And it's not control. In the wild, and I know we're not horses, and men aren't stallions and women aren't mares, but I've received so much from this metaphor that I wanted to share it with you. In the wild, females, they can choose if they want to, they don't fancy the stallion anymore and they'd rather kind of check out something else, they just go. There's no fence. He can't hold them. They're there because they choose to be there, and when they want to go, they go. And every year, some mares go and find another herd, find another male stallion to be with. But the herds where there's the most successful bringing on of the foals, where there's most foal, not mortality, not immortality, but foals going into health, are the ones with this most stable relationship between the mares and the co-mares and the stallion. And that's what creates the healthy environment, the most healthy environment for the babies, is long-term, steady, peaceful relationships in the herd. And that's me being able to receive your strength as protection, and you being able to find a way of expressing your strength with me in a way where I can get, you're protecting me, you're standing with me, you're supporting me, and you've got your gnarly bits, of course, but that's your actual intent, and that's what you live up to over and over and over again. And actually letting that in is beautiful, but it's almost hard. It's like I have to let go of that story that someday is going to get me. And that bit that wants the satisfaction of, so you see, that gruesome kind of, so you see, that wounds have such magnetism. And I have to let go of that if I actually want to let in that I'm with this glorious, loyal man who's there as a protector and supporter, needing my support, but also giving a hell of a lot of support to me to help me thrive. And the gnarly bits don't actually prove otherwise, because over and over again, he takes responsibility for them. And it's really good to say this, because I haven't quite ever said it that clearly, I think. That's the cost. One of the costs is letting go of that pain story. And I'm just thinking of about my mum. And the pain story she had with my dad wasn't really with him, it was her own survival mechanism. After she died, which was in 1914, No, not 1914. No, I know. 2014. That's funny. What's wrong with that? 2014. My dad shared a lot about his process of grief, and in that process he had a dream in which the wounded pattern between them resolved, and she could let in his love on a level that she couldn't ever, and his protection that she couldn't ever when they were alive. She couldn't admit or soften enough to receive that, his strength. And Dad came to live with us for the last 2 years of his life. And if I ever needed proof of the stallion aspect of you, of that holding the herd, how you took care of my dad, who was a great man, but also very annoying at times, and very demanding at times. It was, yeah. So we get to see these things about each other. It's like reality check. Hello. I'm talking to myself. Hello, Susannah. Look at him.
Yeah, thank you. So from Wee Willie Wimpo to Stallion. Yeah. That's, I think about my journey that's parallel to that. It's in that stage of feminism that we got together. Masculinity in itself was toxic. Like, just full stop. Masculine equals toxic. And so that's a pretty unpleasant place to be. It's yeah, all men are rapists. That was another one.
That was a big slogan at the time we got together.
Yeah. And it's not that I didn't learn things from that, from going into that place, but it really, I couldn't be what you needed me to be and stay in that belief. I had to come to terms with, well, what is toxic in masculinity, to recognize that doesn't exist in the world without its counterpart, which is what is toxic in femininity. And how do I do my work with that? Like, learn to ride the wild horse of my own fury, my own upset, my own frustration with life, and take responsibility for it and put it towards something useful, like to become strong, because that's the other side of this unbearable sensitivity. Is there's many people we meet in our work who are becoming so sensitive that they can't bear life anymore. Like, everything is an intrusion. And that's partly because the work that's offered so often is about you must become softer and softer and softer, softer and softer and softer, more and more sensitive and more quiet. And if we don't develop alongside that the strength, like the core strength, I'm talking physically, to look after the instrument that we live in, to take care of it, to look after it, to give it what it needs, like good food that suits this particular structure, good exercise, good movement, good breathing, cold water, whatever it is that we find, the discipline. And I've learned to really love the word discipline. Not discipline in its form of harshness, but discipline which just means I'm committed to this and I'm going to follow it. And when I wake up in the morning and I really don't feel like getting out of bed and going for a walk and getting in the stream and getting on the Peloton and lifting my weights, and it's like, oh, bloody hell, really? I just take 10 seconds to leave that part of me in bed. And I remember why I'm doing that. It's not to be just strong for myself, but to be strong enough to love you and go on unveiling and revealing, and the harvest of all this. And you know, I think any long-term relationship reaches major points of crisis at some point, and sometimes, as you've so beautifully shared, that crisis is about a genuine ending, and sometimes it's really about hitting the next level. Like, actually, I feel safe enough with you that now I'm starting to feel this, and this is really uncomfortable. How do I manage this? And you know, we did have a time when we came very close to splitting up, and we'd been in it. We had the horrible year, our annus horribilis. We were in Nottingham. It was just dreadful.
Wasn't Nottingham's fault?
No, it definitely wasn't Nottingham's fault. And we kept having the same conversation over and over again. Like, should we break up? I don't know. Like, we just, like, we're not there with each other anymore, but we've got our work, and round and round and round, and upset, and nothing moving. Just that real being in the soup of crisis, of discombobulation. And we were sitting in our kitchen. We had one of those little high kitchen stools, and we had a proper brick floor, and it like proper brick, but a bit smoother than that, like that, beautiful but hard floor. And we were drinking wine out of these wine glasses that we'd been given for our wedding, and we were both so frustrated, and my glass was empty, and I just sat and I said to Susannah, this glass is our relationship. And I dropped it, and I expected it to shatter into 1,000 pieces. But what actually happened was this glass bounced twice and landed completely upright and unharmed. And I, for me, that was like, it was such a like slap. Like, wake up! What are you doing? What are you doing, Ya'Acov? And like, just get to work. And so we found this therapist who was, we never quite sure whether he was absolutely awful or a total genius. We really don't know, because he couldn't bear to hear what we were saying to each other. He kept saying, no, Susannah, he didn't say that, he said this. And Susannah said, really? Like, I think he said that. Ya'Acov, did you say that? Yes, I did. And this happened so many times that somehow it became hilarious, and we started laughing, and we were laughing so much we were crying. That was the beginning of the healing. We found our sense of humor again.
And he showed us in the mirror, if he's not being able to understand the full horror of what we are actually saying to each other, and we realised that we realised that actually we do really understand each other, and we're actually very good at listening to each other and being with the reality. So that was his brilliance, whether it was conscious or not, that he mirrored to us the astoundingly good level of communication between us. And it was also very funny. It was a brilliant concept. We have a lot to thank him for.
We really do. So I want to share just a little bit of good news, which is, it's this. In our case, it's absolutely been worth it. Every moment of difficulty and challenge, in our case, has really been worth it. And what I mean by that is that when I said earlier on that it took me 25 years to earn your trust, we just had this breakthrough of just moving into a different level. And this was only really, 10 years ago. And then in the last 5 years. And what we're discovering is that we're gaining this sense of humor and this ability to not have to spend 24 hours in a self-pity and blaming state. We can spend 24 minutes. And one of the things we have, one of the things we have in our living room is these martial arts boxing gloves and boxing gloves. Like, so when we need it, because, you know, we live together, we work together, sometimes we annoy each other. It's just inevitable part of living together because we have different styles. Like, I'm virtually autistic about where I need everything to be. And Susannah's super creative, and, you know, when she's cooking, the whole house is involved. So we're very different. And so we have to learn to negotiate that difference. And one of the things I learned was actually to say what made me uncomfortable about that level of chaos, and to recognize that I needed a little bit more physical peace around me, and to ask you, could you help me with that? Which was very different to, will you stop leaving tea bags in the sink?
Yes, it's very different to say this is my need rather than you are wrong.
Yes, exactly.
It's completely different. And so then I don't always find it easy. Still, I do find it easy. I want to give you what you need, because I know, and I've seen that it is actually a need. It's not control, it's your need, because of the way you're
neurosis.
Neurotically but we all are. No, that's his particularity. That's what I'm saying. That's the. I'm trying to think of your kind of energetic configuration needs that level of physical clarity. I need that on an auditory level. You need that on a visual level. It's just like learning who we are, and then what we need, and on some level, it's also negotiation. Like, how can we manage this together so we all have each have what we need, so that we can ride together. And yes, hold on. I thought we could do 2, 2, 2, 2, and then
Let me finish that.
And then go.
Thank
We
you.
do 2 then.
Well, I'll be sure. So just a little bit more about harvest, because I've come to the understanding that the longer a couple is together, basically the better the sex should be. And that's, of course, from my point of view. And from Susannah's point of view, in order to make that happen, the deeper the intimacy must be. That means the more I must listen. We must listen to each other, tell each other what's happening, actually reveal what's going on, and take the time to hear one another. And that intimacy creates safety, enough safety for that fire to rise. And what we've discovered is that just, it's really infinite, that space. There's no limit, there's no edge to how far that level of intimacy can go in terms of a prayer. Like, to make love is like, sometimes I when I'm drumming, I hear the sound of the song of what's going on the earth, like the cries of pain, the cries of joy, the singing, the silence, the whole, this noise that's coming from this earth. And I recognize that it's made up of so many things. And one of those voices is the voice of making love, bringing love into the world, like as a prayer. And that's gone far, far beyond what I ever imagined. I had no idea this existed. I never read about it. I never heard anyone else really talking about it. That lovemaking can just go deeper, 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 wider, 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 like so beyond the dream. We've become for each other, and we've taught each other to be the lovers we always dreamt of being with over this time. Through how? By communicating and learning to say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and not expecting that because we both speak English, you know what I need. I actually have to tell you. I have to be vulnerable.
There's a whole other piece here about the menopause and all of that. But I did not know how intense the menopause would be for me, or the harvest on the beginning of the other side, which is where physiologically.
I call it the menopause.
Your menopause.
I had a menopause while you had your menopause.
The refirement. Anyway, that's a whole other talk. So that what you're talking about, the harvest and I'm really just going, okay, we're really adults. I can really tell you what I want to tell you. I want to tell you about sex, something about sex, not anatomical, because that's our contract, that's private, but vibrationally. Is that okay? I'll take that as a yes. Absolutely. So everything you've said is true. And a lot of it is about communication. It's all about communication, really. Or communion. And it's about being safe to be all of myself with you. And for you to be safe to be all of yourself with me. And the kind of sex we have now is lovemaking in a classic sense of penetration, etc., and all that kind of thing. But energetically, it feels like the sphere of you meeting the sphere of me, that we become transparent to each other. Like I feel you and me, and you feel me and you and me. You know, we're and there's no well, there's still more and more that we're bringing into consciousness and into it's okay to feel this, to allow this, to know this, to do with our beauty and our scars, and it's profoundly healing. But so the communication isn't just about I like you to touch me like that. Though that's very important to be able to say those kind of things. It's also about in our daily lives, which in one way it's all foreplay, or the opposite. It's all leading to the vibrational nature of the next making love we have.
Foreplay or warplay?
It's foreplay or what? That is good.
We'll have that as a chapter.
Or even the title. Anyway, foreplay or warplay. Yeah, exactly. It's either going towards love or away from it, and that's about can we be whole? Can we bring, you know, like that dog, the beautiful front legs and the wounded back bit, and like it's all, I'm here. I'm experiencing this wound, or I'm loving this right now about me or you. Or, have you noticed? I had a really big thing that I thought, he's very sensitive. So, of course he can feel what I'm feeling. Of course he knows what I'm experiencing or what I need. But then I realised he didn't, and I actually had to say it. Like what my orgasm just felt like. And if I share that with you, I'm letting you into my den. And then and then you let me into your experience. Then we have a co-den, and yeah, I don't know if I've ever been told about people of our age who can authentically say that the sexual intimacy and pleasure and ecstasy is growing stronger. And the last thing I want to say is that we are very, very lucky, and also we've chosen it and we've worked for it, that we have as our lives, our work, is movement medicine. Movement medicine is a conscious form of dance which we developed through 18 years with Gabrielle Roth, and then bringing together shamanic and psychotherapeutic and neuroscience threads of our own experience and practice and learning into a weave that makes sense and is very coherent in our own experience. And we teach that, but we also do that. And that practice gives us a space to show up and keep encountering all of ourselves. But more than that, it's our service to the world. And that is, I can't comprehend of a intimate long-term relationship that doesn't have a shared purpose. I don't know how that works. I'm sure it does. I mean, it can be the family. It can be, we want to raise our kids well together, or we want to keep this house, or whatever. But for myself as a soul, I need to be with a soul partner. We're here for something that is beyond this. And I've heard other couples say that long-term successful as in they've stayed together, they've mutually thrived, say that the key thing for them has been, we serve something bigger than this together. And then we're really lucky that the thing that we've created, is a shared expression of our purpose, also supports us to do the work that supports our relationship. Last bit. We were in Ecuador in the jungle some years ago, quite a few years ago, Himpiquet, 10, 15 years ago. And we were doing a ayahuasca ceremony with a shaman there who was an extraordinary elder. He was, he had big lineage strength and clarity, and he was, I call him the Oxford Don of shamans because of how I perceived him. Anyway, in this ceremony, I asked, so how can I strengthen my offering in the world? And the answer I got was so clear, and it felt like it came from Himpiquet. I don't know if it did, but anyway, it came from the spirit. And it was, if you want to strengthen your offering, Susannah, in the world, then pay attention to the space between you and Ya'Acov, and keep that source, keep that fountain, that spring, clean and nourished. And it was so not the thing I expected to hear. It was about relationality. It was about this space between us as where the love comes from. And it was this making love, sharing love, making love, keep this clean, sharing love. And that teaching changed, me listening to that teaching changed my life and our life. And it was like a real definitive turning point for me. Like, okay, I feel the truth of that. And let me do my best.
You can imagine how much I love that man, Himpiquet. I didn't speak to him before the ceremony.
And then it's like, for me experiencing, I give everything and I receive everything. And that takes a certain, crazy, vulnerable courage to give everything. And you don't know if you're going to get it back. You don't know if that circle will, but that's what you can do, is you can give. which doesn't mean giving yourself away. It means being fully there and sharing that fullness with the other person.
One of the things we keep discovering as the spring comes is I keep feeling when I'm walking early in the morning and I just see the generosity of life, like just coming forth. And it's just like, I'm reminded, wow, I could be so much more generous. I could be so much more generous. And so I'm learning like how to do that, like compliments, like a lot of old, we've become quite old-fashioned, we realise. We kind of, simple things like, I love opening the door for Susannah. I just adore doing that. Or, it's just, we've kind of, the chemistry that's landed in the space between us is kind of a bit traditional in some senses. And we don't think that that's the way it should be. It's just the way it became for us.
He pays the bills, I cook lunch, mostly.
Yeah. And it's...
Except for the Sunday roast.
I do the Sunday roast. Anyway, so the reason to say that is that we find out through a long time of being together, like, who am I and who are you? And that core understanding that however long I've known you, you are still an absolute mystery to me. And that's beautiful. There's like so much more to discover. Yeah. And that, an alchemical relationship is one where both partners get stronger. That's how you know. And it's not that you're always getting stronger, because in order to get stronger, as we've said, sometimes you have to fall apart. But yeah, so we really encourage the courage that it takes to love and to risk loving and to not give up on love wherever you are in terms of your relational space. Not to give up. My great uncle fell in love when he was 76 and had 10 years of joyful marriage to an absolute extraordinary woman. I have never seen such long eyelashes. And like, honestly, like, incredible being. Apparently, in fact, she insisted on silk leopard skin sheets. 76, I was so happy for him. And he died in the shower one day. He's probably exhausted. But never give up on the possibility of love. And this is what we want to do now, is to play the drums for you and just take you on a little journey to have a sense of... Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, have a sense of where you've come from, what you carry, where you are, and what you dream. It's just simple, and we'll do that with the drums. And we invite you just to be open to what's not known to you. Like, we all think we know what we know, which we do, but it's tiny compared to what we don't know. So the drum is an invitation to be open to what's not known about what you're bringing with you, about where you are, and about what you dream. So we'll do this journey now, and then we'll have a chance if any of you want to share anything or even ask anything.
How long is that going to be? I'm just wondering whether I need to go for a pee now.
I think if you're having the thought, you should go. Don't hold on.
We're gonna wait for you.
Yeah, we'll wait for you.
Anyone that needs to go now.
Good idea. Thank you. And if if the rest of us could just, if you could just close your eyes while we're waiting and just have a feeling inside yourself what you've heard and what it touches in you. And it might be something that you disagree with. It might be something where you have a very different understanding, and that's the good thing about a strong story. It helps you to know your own. So take a few minutes to listen, and once everyone's returned, we'll drum for a little while.
Some more people behind you. One more. Would you check? This? Yes, thank you. So we're not waiting unnecessarily. Yeah,
I can hear her.
you can hear. Great, thank you. You were the last one, I believe.
Once again, just allowing the weight of your body, your feelings, your thoughts, everything to drop down with gravity, receiving that support of the great mama underneath us, this living earth. Breathing a little deeper, if you will. And as we drop down, also letting ourselves be open to the sky and the warmth of the sun, the great papa that rises every morning, that invites the life inside us to shine, to grow, to be ourselves. Like a warm hand at our back, saying yes, go on, continue. And sensing around us all that supports and guides us, all that inspires us, gives us strength. If you will, calling that awareness present. Sense those roots going deep down, spreading out, giving the heart the support of ground. Imagine those wings of the heart opening through your arms and hands and fingers to receive this Beltane warm spring return of life. To remember the sap rising in the tree of life of your body, creative sexual energy, the gift of life. Just to allow that to be present, not to push it, not to decide how it should be, simply to welcome that source of life within you and from the earth and from the sun and from the waters of life and from the wind and the breath. Behind us, the road of our lives that we have already walked all the way back to the moment of conception, seeing that road from this place, like you're witnessing the unfolding story of a human being, sensing the experiences in universal shamanic practice. We say everything that is at our back, no exception, given enough resource, safety and love, is a source of potential medicine. Sensing family and your own relationship story. What you've learned through growing up in your family, in your culture, through your experience. From this place of support and resource, recognizing all that as not something to get rid of, but rather something to digest, to alchemize, to make medicine. Imagine that which is behind us, even beyond our own biographies, in our ancestry, that there is strength and dignity and wisdom also at our back, that we can lean into, so that we can feel that warmth of support. And from this place, noticing where you are right now in your relational life, in forging understanding, communication, kinship, in the space between you and the people that you are in relationship with. Acknowledging if you're alone, also that, and how that is, may be the perfect thing right now.
So let yourself take an inventory of how you're doing in terms of these relational fields that you're part of, with as much honesty and compassion as you can bring to this. Bring your hands in front of you and with your palms upwards. Just allow yourself to hold the parts of this that you've become aware of that are to do with attributes of strength, of openness, that you regard as parts of your relational fields that are functional, at least. That you want to really support, acknowledge, celebrate, get behind, of course, and grow, but that are basically working. Let this hand, whichever hand it is you've chosen, really cup and support and acknowledge the weight of this goodness that's already there. However big or small, it's not insignificant. Take a breath, and in the other hand, acknowledge the aspects that are more challenging or less established, or maybe in crisis, or places of great pain. And also with your hands, this hand, acknowledge and cup, acknowledge, honor this aspect of your heart, your relational heart. Keep breathing. And then if you will, slowly bring your hands together and bring these two sets of colors into your heart, acknowledging they're both part of your wholeness and your woundedness, your unbroken and your broken. Letting the unbroken in you hold gently that which is broken. Letting yourself reside with the support of the ground under you in your whole being. Space for it all.
And from this place, sensing that road ahead, the time between now and your last heartbeat, may that be long and fulfilling. Sensing that road ahead as life's invitation to create, to paint your being, to sing your song, to dance your dance, to offer your offering, and to love, and to heal, and to grow, and to evolve, and to grow that relationship between strength and sensitivity. And as you look at that road ahead, just ask, if you will, for guidance. Guidance from that which guides you, that which is also within you, but that which is also greater than you. And receiving for a little while. Sensing possibility. Not deciding what's possible, but seeing what may be possible. Seeing that which is as yet unknown. And as we come to the completion of this journey, just taking a moment to dedicate this practice, this paying of attention to whatever you wish to dedicate it to. One last thing was, I did a vision quest. I do them as often as I can. Just it's more like being on the land. And I did one many years ago, and I had this vision of a young man playing a saxophone. And I was like, God, I was up there for 5 days, and that's all I got was this young boy playing a saxophone. I was like, what the fuck, man? I spent 5 days fasting. And I thought, okay, well, I'll buy a saxophone. So I bought a second-hand saxophone. And it just didn't work. I just made a horrible racket. It just really wasn't me. And I was like, well, that was a waste of time, wasn't it? 5 days, blah, 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 doing all this stuff. 10 years later, I came home from traveling. And I walked into the house. And Susannah was there with our son, Reuben, who was about 9, maybe, playing a saxophone. And I went, oh, it wasn't even about me. That's the thing, we take everything personally. And that's ceremony is often like a vision. A vision is it never comes with an instruction manual, because they know that you'd never read it. You kind of go, I can't, that's going to take 10 years. So you just ignore it. And then if you're following that thread, you will do that work. And then it lands. And that's the thing about being on earth. Making vision material reality takes a lot longer than it does in a dream. But our indigenous friends also say that once you've dreamed it, it is so.
I really appreciate the word bridge that you brought in. And that bridging is, as you said, it takes time, it takes commitment again, it takes really staying with it, kind of trusting or believing in what you've received there. And I kept hearing the words, so I'll just say in case they're useful for you or anyone else. How do we bring our wild selves home? How do we bring our sacred selves home? How do we make space for the sacred and the wild soul of life that animates us in the heart of our homes and our relationships and our day-to-day lives? And it's that allowing the sacred to be, and the wildness of our deep natures to be in this world. I think that's the healing of the bridging. So it's not the sacred and the profane, it's simply life that is so wild and so mysterious, and in which we are all we are wild creatures, we are wild animals, all of us. That strong and that sensitive and that holy.
Thank you, Susannah. So just to complete, we'll just send a little song and maybe gather in whatever you've received this evening that's of use to you. Wrap it up. Put it somewhere deep in your heart. Thank you for your attention and your presence, for your sharings, for being. This is a completion song.